We recently lost another Star Trek treasure. Joining Leonard Nimoy, who played Mr. Spock, DeForest Kelley, who played Dr. Leonard McCoy, James Doohan, who played Montgomery Scott, and Marjo Barrett, who played number 1 in the series pilot The Cage, then go on to play Nurse Chapel in the original series, and later to become Counselor Troy's mother in Star Trek The Next Generation. She would also be the voice of the computer. The Star Trek world has also lost several supporting actors along the way, most notably Ricardo Montalban, who portrayed Khan Noonien Singh in the original series and would later reprise his role in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. In late July 30th to be specific, we lost Nichelle Nichols. Nichelle portrayed Nyota Uhura on our beloved series Star Trek. She was my first crush. I remember seeing her on the bridge at her post in a red Starfleet uniform that made my heart swell. Okay, so she wasn't actually my first crush. My first crush was the USS Enterprise herself, and that holds true to this day. But that is another video. Nichelle played Uhura in the late 1960s, then reprised her role in the franchise films during the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. Her last film will be a fan production of Star Trek: First Frontier, which was released in 2020. During her life, she gave us so much. Her loving, caring, and pioneering character showed how diverse the future could be, breaking down the walls of racial segregation. She would also show how a woman could occupy a position of importance on the flagship of the fleet, a role that Marjo Barrett would also shape as number 1 in the pilot episode, The Cage. Nichelle Nichols was born Grace Dell Nichols on December 28, 1932. She was born in Robbins, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. She was the daughter of Samuel Earl Nichols and Lucia Parks Nichols. Nichelle's father, Samuel Earl Nichols, would become mayor of Robbins in 1929, as well as the town's chief magistrate. Not particularly caring for the name Grace, Nichelle asked her parents for a new name. Her parents suggested Nichelle, stating that the name meant victorious maiden, and from that moment on, Grace Dell Nichols became Nichelle Nichols. Nichelle would be married twice, at one time to Foster Johnson and then to Duke Mundy. She would have one child, Kyle Johnson. Young Nichelle would attend Inglewood High School and go on to aspire to be a dancer and an actress, as well as a very talented singer. Nichelle was especially partial to jazz. It was a chance encounter with Gene Roddenberry that would change Nichelle Nichols' life. She met Gene Roddenberry while playing a small role in Roddenberry's first television series, The Lieutenant, in the 1964 episode To Set It Right. Nichelle would later be cast to play the role of Nyota Uhura on the new television series titled Star Trek. Nichelle's character would be that of a communications officer aboard the flagship of the fleet, the USS Enterprise NCC 1701. In fact, it would be Nichelle Nichols and William Shatner making television history together on the Star Trek episode Plato's Stepchildren. The Season 3 episode premiered on November 21st, 1968, while the landing party would be taken hostage on an unknown planet that would be rich in kyanite deposits. The inhabitants would inherit telekinetic powers from the kyanite and were able to control the landing party with their minds. They would place Captain Kirk, Mr. Spock, Nurse Chapel, and Lieutenant Uhura on display for their amusement. It would be this exhibition that would lead to Captain Kirk kissing Lieutenant Uhura, television's first interracial kiss. What seems like no big deal today was quite the opposite in 1968. Later, Nichelle would be tempted to leave Star Trek to pursue other options. That's when she would be approached by Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. King told her how important it was to have an African-American woman portray a position of importance and authority. That meeting with Dr. King would influence Nichelle to remain on Star Trek as Lieutenant Uhura, for not only for the duration of the TV series, but for the feature films as well. Nichelle would go on to play Lieutenant Uhura for 3 seasons of Star Trek, which would air on NBC from 1967 to 1969. She would also reprise her role as Uhura in Star Trek The Motion Picture, The Wrath of Khan, The Search for Spock, The Voyage Home, The Final Frontier, and The Undiscovered Country. Then again in the 2020 fan film Star Trek First Frontier. Nichelle would reprise her roles in minor appearances and Star Trek conventions as well as along the way of her career. Her film career would span from 1959 through 2019. Nichelle Nichols would pass away on July 30th, 2022 from heart failure in Silver City, New Mexico. She was 89 years old.